if you don't want real conversations happening with your kids,
Yeah.
don't let them come to my house.
Sure.
Because
Come on.
if something is happening in the world around
Yeah,
us, like
we're gonna
I'm
talk
having
about it.
conversations.
Welcome again to the Prime Mover Podcast, where we ignite the engine of your success in faith, family, finance, and fitness. Join us as we explore the power of being a prime mover in both your professional and personal life.
And once finding that flow, that's where that freedom is. People think that the calendar like ties us to things, but it doesn't.
Right.
It offers so much freedom inside of
Yeah.
that.
I think this is one thing too, and I think probably trying to find the right words to describe it. I think as entrepreneurs, I didn't unlock who I was capable of becoming as an entrepreneur until I started living my life by a calendar. However, entrepreneur and artist is two different things. You have people out there who are super successful who don't want to live life by a calendar. Whereas you could easily, I've had moments in my life, even in week, where I'm trying to think of the word for it. I've been thinking for a second, but like I have an idol, which I don't want to have, of accomplishment. Like an accomplishment idol is that I don't feel myself, or I don't feel successful or satisfied unless I have proof of the things that I've accomplished. Whereas like talking about my wife, who's a free spirited artist, who's like, if I have to live my life by a calendar, I'm not fulfilled.
Yeah.
If I don't live my life by a calendar, I'm not fulfilled.
Yeah.
So I think that bias of success is actually healthy, because it allows me to, I had a long time where if I didn't feel like you were playing at my level, then maybe I'm not gonna listen or associate myself with you, because I can't communicate like that. I don't view life like that. She views life completely differently than me. And I have to look at it sometimes and check myself, and like, maybe I'm a little too serious right now. Maybe the calendar's not as important as what she got going on. So I think that's been the biggest hang up, is I know that she wants the success that comes with discipline and being disciplined by time and time blocking, but I also respect the fact that she doesn't want to be beholden to that. And if an opportunity presents itself, she wants to be able to jump on it. And she's probably the highest visionary I've ever seen, with the least amount of integrator. I thought it was me, but it's actually my wife. So I appreciate it. I love everybody's belief systems on calendar and organization and stuff. Like, I like to hear it. Some people, I want the big ass calendar on the wall.
Oh, I have that too.
Yeah,
So
same
like I
here.
have it in very different ways, right? So like I have 3 years. So I
Okay.
have 2 years ago, last year, and then this year's calendar, right? And then as I'm gonna, finish building that out, and some of it is because my schedule with my kids, right? And some of it is how I think. And I don't think that there's any right or wrong way, because I can relate a lot with what you're saying with Leslie, because of the fact that I don't want to be too rigid, because I have been that before in my life, and that does not serve me or the people around me well. As a matter of fact, I even brought something because I want to make sure that we talk about that. And it was in a time and space where I was too rigid with things, and my kid is actually the one who kind of put me in check and balance on that. But I also have, and I think it's about finding what works, right? So sometimes my brain works that I have to see the whole big picture. And that means, what all does that look like? And so this year, even my excitement of getting dialed in even more so to my calendar, it was because I realized that, there were parts of last year where I was a hostage because someone else scheduled something in my calendar. And because I, didn't want to let someone down. And so now I'm making myself crazy in order to make all these things happen. And I realized, oh my gosh, well, I have to like block off those spaces. And so in it, sometimes I have, well, not sometimes, but I have already blocked in where I'm going to be with friends, or I'm going to be with family. And I don't know if that's really going to be the day and time that I'm going to do it. However, I want to make sure that is important to me is already in there. And it was, Rachel Hollis. I like her as a podcast. A friend turned me on to her, and I was listening, and this is something that it was the first time I heard about it. But going back inside of your calendar for the year before to determine what it is that you're going to create, and like, how do you feel about that,
Yeah.
right? Did you move the needle forward based upon what it is that you did, or did you become a hostage
Sure.
to someone else's,
Agenda,
agenda?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have it in your calendar, right? Because there were times that I wasn't as dialed into my calendar. And so when I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, well, did I really achieve what it is that I wanted to achieve and everything else? Then go back in photos.
Yeah.
What were you doing
Same.
at that time in
I
photos?
do that a lot
And
too.
so I sat there and I looked through all of that stuff, and I saw where, and I have that thing inside of me too,
Yeah.
that it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, left untamed and unchecked,
Sure.
it can be.
Mhm.
That feeling that I have to do more.
Yeah.
I have to do more. I have to be more. I have more,
Sure.
more. And it's not in the more
Right.
where our creativeness, our flow, our peace, our joy comes from. It's in those moments
No, I agree.
of being present, right?
Yeah.
And so I have the big ass calendar on the wall of the 3 years worth that I
Right.
can look back and I did this, this, and this.
Yeah.
How many trips did I take, right? Because that's always a goal of mine, is making sure I take
You
enough
take time
trips
for
with my
trips.
kids. Yeah.
No, that's a good. I have a close friend of mine. I won't mention their name on the podcast, but very successful entrepreneur, second or third generation, which is typically where it falls apart.
Yes.
And so he made a comment to me via text, man, a few words, but when he speaks to me, I always really grab the wisdom. And he said, am I the only person that lays in bed at night after an 18-hour day that thinks about the things that they didn't get to do? Or when I feel like I haven't done certain things, I feel like I just left a lot on the table. And I'm like, nah, I think that's just a mindset of the entrepreneurs who make it. It's, can you, turning off the switch is not really a thing.
Mm.
It's changing focus.
Mhm.
My switch is always on. I'm generating leads no matter where I go.
Mhm.
If I don't, maybe it's not intentional, but talking to people, being intentional about conversations about people, I'm generating leads.
Mhm.
The switch is never really off. And I agree with you. I think left unchecked, it could become an idol, but I think it's healthy. But that's a pretty good segue to start the podcast. So, I'm gonna go ahead and do a little intro.
Yeah.
The podcast was gonna probably be largely unedited. We'll chop out a few things, but if you say something that you don't want them to hear, let me know.
Okay.
But hey, welcome to another episode of Prime Mover Podcast. I gotta confess, we haven't been on our game and on our schedule lately to make sure we get high quality content out. And I'm gonna go ahead and change my intro because the things that you heard in the preface that our guest today said made me really think about things that we don't put on the calendar that may not pay the bills or may not move the needle forward in our everyday life or business. Podcasting for me is that. I would love to tell you that this pays our bills, but it doesn't. But what it does, it pays my emotional and my intellectual bills. I really love doing this. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I love talking to moms, dads, anybody in my space who shares common goals, whether it's Nick doing the interviewing, me doing the interviewing. The reason why we started Prime Mover Podcast was to level up our circle and surround ourselves with people who think and do life the way that we want to do life, with a growth mindset. And that's why it's called Prime Mover Podcast. So today we're going to check some boxes, hopefully for you, for me, for our guest. So without further ado, I have Miss Kelli Guidry with us today. Um, Real estate tycoon, mogul. She may or may not agree with that, but I agree with it. And so she's also a single mom, growth minded, and a prime mover. And for if you're just tuning in today, the reason why it's called Prime Mover Podcast is my trade is a mechanic, a generator specialist, and the power plant in that generator is considered the prime mover. And I really thought about it from an entrepreneurial perspective. The prime mover is the self starter, the person that gets the ground broken whenever new development is going to take place. The Cosmo Kramer entering the room ready to set the world on fire. That to us is a prime mover. You're not going to make it on this podcast unless you check one or most of those boxes. She just happens to check all of them. So welcome, close friend, Miss Kelli Guidry.
Oh my gosh, what an intro. Like that, I need that. And I'm gonna like play that daily to hype myself up to go out into the world
That's
and do
right.
what I do. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And when you were just saying all of those things, the one thing that that while this doesn't pay, the bills, but it does move the needle forward,
Yeah,
for sure, in like the relationship deposit, right?
absolutely.
Not only in like business, but in personal. And that's what I had a coach, and I think about that all the time. What deposits are we making into that relationship bank?
It's hard to measure relationship capital, but if I look at business capital, I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I'm rich. I feel like I'm rich in regards to my family. I got some amazing kids. I got an amazing wife. I have an amazing support system of an extended family. But when it comes to relationship capital, I'm very wealthy.
Yeah.
I feel like I made it a very, sometimes unbeknownst to myself, but over the last 5 to 7 years, for sure, it's been a really intentional uh, approach is developing relationship capital. So I got an agenda on this conversation, but I'm going to roll right into it. I want you to tell the people watching, me, anybody, let's give me a little intro and a bio from in your own words of who's Kelli Guidry.
Oh, Kelli Guidry. Kelli Guidry is somebody who holds personal transformation at a very high level inside of my life. There are a few words that come to mind that I try to embody in my daily life and with the relationships around me, and accountability being one of them. I fail forward a lot, right? I am human, and I am in all of my humanness, and that is I think where things got most interesting for me is whenever I sat in, that authenticity and what it is and who I am,
Hmm.
and embraced a lot of that. So I am a mom of three, first and foremost, and I am at times an overachiever and type A, and I try to keep that in check. I practice real estate, and I have the pleasure of working with a lot of business owners and getting to work with them and like how their mind works and how they approach things, and I get to
Sure.
learn a lot about things. And so I am always super appreciative of that, and it's interesting, right, that ended up being like what my clientele ultimately consisted of. And real estate, I used to think it was who I am, and I learned it's not who I am, it's what I do. And I enjoy doing it. I try to preach to my kids often, find something that you enjoy. And, Zig Ziglar, never work a
Sure.
day in your life. It's work. It is work. However, it makes the hard days a little
Yeah.
less hard,
Yeah.
right? And I don't have as many hard days, or if I do have the hard days, it just,
Sure.
I still have that fire inside of me. I am also, I think I don't think I know, if you asked people, who I am, I am, inspirational and rainbows and unicorns, and that's by design.
Yeah.
It's not that I just, I'm just
Right.
like that. No, it was a lot of work and intentionality for me to wake up each morning and choose what kind of mindset I'm going to be in. And even if my day gets off course, getting that back on track. And I really just, I really am someone who has a light inside of me. I feel like it is my obligation to shine my light brightly and impact the spaces and people, places, and things that I think about, speak about, hold in my heart are the places that I walk into. I think I've said that once or twice before.
Absolutely. Look, I'll tell you a short story because I'm going to roll right into a couple of things that we like God winks on this podcast. The very next topic I have is called failing forward.
Yeah.
And you just started off with
Yeah.
that. So one thing I want that you just said that I think super important, that I think if it's young entrepreneurs listen or anybody in business, or maybe you had a W-2 job and you one day want to be a business owner, a leader, you wrote down that you were, how did you word it? You said transformation specialist. You said something when you started.
Yeah, I did.
I've actually,
Personal transformation.
okay.
Yeah.
So I wrote down transformationalist.
Yeah.
And the reason I've used that before is because once you learn how to transform, it's very easy to explain to someone else, hey, I want to change, I want to transform. nothing wrong with that. It's called growing.
Yes.
The world has actually put a bad stigma on transforming because most people in the world think that change is a bad thing. I think change is a part of growth. And so
It's
I would
inevitable.
call you a transformationalist. You've done it for yourself. You have receipts. You've proven that you've transformed through a multitude of adversity causing situations. And here you are. Now you can help others transform. Work as an idol is a bad thing, but when work is worship, it's a great thing.
Mhm.
You have a light because you inspire people when you walk into a room. That's using work as worship. You're not walking in the rooms looking to take advantage of people. You're looking to add value. And when you walk into every room looking to add value, work is worship at that point. And a friend of mine, we were at a private dinner party together, you and I have another friend of mine, another entrepreneur. And at the end of the night, maybe it was at the end, maybe it was a day later. I know it was that night. So the night goes on, and I think you were there first, and you actually beat me to the dinner party. And so he says, "Hey man, who's the girl in the black dress?" This girl in the black dress, this girl in the black.
Like one.
I said, "Who's the girl in the black dress?" I said, "That's Kelli Guidry, good friend of Leslie and I's." He's like, "Man, she got something with her." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "When I walked in, she walked right up to me, put her hand out, eyes wide open, smile wide open, and said, 'Hey, how you doing? I'm Kelli Guidry.'" And he said, "I didn't know. I've never been approached by like a woman like by a, he's a married man. It was nothing having to do with that. But he's like, I don't normally get approached by women like that. That was super impressive." I said, "What?" She said, "What does she do?" I said, "Well, she's an entrepreneur, but she's practices real estate." He says, "I could see why she's successful."
Aw.
So it's no, not if you want to know what's going to get you to the next level. If you're in a W-2 job and you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a leader, start with that. Start with something as simple as every room you walk into, look to add value and make a positive impact. And it's as simple as eyes wide open, smile, direct, look someone in the eye, introduce yourself, and there's a sense of pride, accomplishment, transformationalism behind that smile, behind that introduction. That's an easy way to get started in leadership, ownership, or anything. So I want to go into failing forward because that was my first topic. Is um, I was thinking about, I know Kelli, how am I going to turn this podcast into not just a friendly conversation like we've had before,
Mhm.
which would add value. However, I wanted to provide a little structure. So, what is failing forward? Give me an example of how you have failed forward, and then let's just walk through that. I want to know what your opinions are on that.
Yeah. Well, so first, thank you for sharing that story
Yeah.
because I haven't heard that story
I didn't
before.
tell you. I
So
thought I might have told you.
no,
Yeah.
no. And so I appreciate that. And it's not the first time that I've heard something like that.
All
And
right.
so those God winks,
Yep.
right, kind of lead right into that. And failing forward, whew, when you say that, I am like a rush of memories come
Mhm.
back. And it's almost like which one and which
Sure.
direction do I go into? And so failing forward to me, in personal or business, it is, you know, and even now today, it's in trusting that there is no wrong move,
Right.
right? Whatever it is that I decide, because we can get like that paralysis analysis and get so stuck in like, well, but I'm not quite sure what the right move is. That it doesn't matter. Like,
Mm.
we go in internally. I feel like we all have all the answers that we
Yeah.
need whenever we go into our quiet spaces,
Sure.
right? And prayerful, meditative, like really, because it's there, it's imprinted in our hearts.
Mhm.
And so when we go in there, just knowing what is it that feels right and what do we feel like is that right next move,
Sure.
and knowing and trusting that whatever experience that we have along the way, it's going to be exactly what we need to take us to the next level.
I agree with that. I think failing in the general sense of the word gets overused. Whereas if you're doing something, anything, you're going to have moments of failure.
Yeah.
From a coaching perspective, sports coaching, I was taught at a young age, we never lose, we win or we learn.
Yeah.
And so that to me embodies failing forward. It's like, okay, how do I not make the same mistakes twice? And even if I do, what ambient conditions may have changed that were out of my control? I can either choose to sulk in them, or I can choose to grow from this.
A victim mindset.
Yep.
So, and the words that you just used there, what I use is lessons are blessings.
Yep.
And that's truly how I feel. And every moment that I consider a win in my life, when I've had like that huge transformative moment, it all was in these moments of failures and lessons, right?
Sure.
And so when I think about when my house exploded with sewage and I was a single mom and me and my daughter had no place to go for 8 months because the house couldn't be lived in, I think about that time and all the chaos that seemed to be going on. And I actually described that as I had the most interesting moment. And these are probably like, this is one of those moments that for me is just, it's one of those like etched in my life, in my book of life. And I felt the calm in the storm.
Yeah.
I literally, in my mind's eye, could see like as if I was in the middle of this tornado and everything was just like, it's like I could see all the chaos around me just spinning around a car, a house, whatever.
Twister.
Yes. But in that, I was calm and I knew that it was going to be okay. Even though I had a 2-year-old and I had no clue where we were going to go and what we were going to do and what that looked like while the house gets put back together. And so, yeah. And even like in business, growing a team and there were times, I mean, shoot, 2 years ago, I came to a point where I blew the team up. Like it was, these are the decisions to be made and how the response comes forward. It gives me my answer of how I move forward.
Sure.
And essentially the ship was on fire and it all exploded. The wheels came flying off. Everything about that was so great because while that was happening, I was rebuilding and I got to see truly who I am.
Yeah.
I got to learn even more about myself. I got to learn where was the direction that I was meant to go moving forward. And for that, I'm so grateful for every single one of those moments. And that's failing forward, just knowing that and trusting, right?
Yeah.
I trust myself
Bet on you.
I have everything that I need in order to get myself out of whatever situation that comes forward.
I love that. I think I've had I've created the most traction in my in every aspect. Parental life. I'm a dad, so the times when I've felt like I failed the most, the best parts were on the other side of that.
Yeah.
As a husband, I had a failed marriage as well. And the best parts of me came after those moments of failure. And I think it's easy to have a victim mindset. It's really hard to, in the midst of failure, know that, well, you know what, I can look at this as the end, or I can look at it as I'm about to flip the script and write a new beginning. I think that's super exciting.
Yes. So, and even in what you said, right? Because I've had the failed marriage, I've sat in all of that. I had a DWI, and in that came me not drinking, right?
Right.
Does that mean that I'm never going to drink ever again? I'm not going to say that. I'm not owning that. But for me, and the next right step was just not to drink. And
Sure.
I stacked enough days, and that's what it looked like. I was the kid that other parents didn't want their kids hanging out with, right?
Yep.
So to transcend, to transform, and I always think, hey, for anybody who moves away, it's very easy. Move an hour away and you can transform yourself into whatever it is
Sure.
you want to be. To do that in the town that you have grown up in, to take people who had you in this box because of the way that you showed up, in moments,
Sure.
to take that box and flip it upside down, shake it all up, rescatter everything, and then stand on top of that box as your foundation is something completely different. And in that, I mean, that builds confidence in itself.
That's awesome. And look, I'm all over the place with my topics. I don't want to go in from, it's not, we're going to give some tactical advice here too. But I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Here's where I'm thinking now. I want to go with this. So you did say you were a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm around a lot of dads. I'm around a lot of spiritual dads. Around a lot of spiritual dads who are entrepreneurs, who are maybe leaders at their regular job. I don't not associate with people who aren't entrepreneurs. That's ridiculous. However, I think the definition of an entrepreneur does not mean you own a business. It means you're a leader. It means you take ownership, that when you are in a certain situation, you take the bull by the horns. That's entrepreneurial mindset. Doesn't mean you own a company. So with that said, I'm around a lot of those men who have a legacy mindset. I didn't think I knew what legacy meant, but until I gave my life to Christ, I did not realize what thinking with the end in mind meant, which is a legacy mindset. When when God thinks, he thinks with the end in mind. We don't get to see that end. We just have to have faith to move forward. But as a human, I can think with the end in mind. As a leader, as a husband, as a father, I can say this is what I would like, the direction I would like my kids to go in. I can tell them that all I want.
Yeah.
But until I build the model for them to follow, they ain't listening to what I got to
Why
say.
would they? Yeah.
So I'm around a lot of men in that world. And I've been to masterminds, I've hours of podcasts, been on podcasts to talk about legacy. If you've known me long enough, you've probably seen me with a t-shirt on that says just legacy on the front of it, because I want to remind myself not to make impulsive decisions that people that are in my sphere of influence are going to have to cash a check for. I'm thinking with the end in mind.
Yeah.
As a woman, an entrepreneur, a thought leader, a motivator, and inspire, a transformationalist, when you look at your kids, when you look at your career, throw legacy in that. Do you think about that?
So just recently, and so as a matter of fact, last year I sat with the kids and we made vision boards. And
Awesome.
look, they were not like, woohoo, we're doing this.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You mean I
Yes.
got to put my phone down? Yeah.
Yes. And look, in that, even establishing what life looked like for me and three kids after divorce and married life and the life that we knew for so long, a lot of that came with them seeing mom vulnerable and different things like that. And so legacy just made it onto my vision board this past year. And so last year and carrying forward, right? Because there are certainly things that get on my vision board, and it doesn't necessarily mean that like, oh, it's for the year. No. It's because like it holds something important. And so that's like 2 years ago. My theme for the year was right on time. And when I tell you that everything was showing up right on time, and that's something that wasn't just for that year.
Sure.
I'm a firm believer that everything shows up right on time. And so legacy was put on that board. And so I feel like as we go through different transformations, as we continue to grow and expand who it is that we are, our hearts, our knowledge, our relationships, all of the things, those words, those key words, we dig deeper, right? Because legacy, okay, I'm gonna, my legacy and what that means for me.
Yeah.
But then it starts to stand out a little more, right? I have a mentor that we meet weekly, and he always says me plus three, right? And it's him plus three generations. And boy, when I heard that, I'm like, oh, I like that, me plus three. Like, how deep am I thinking, right? Because when someone starts first talking to you about your goals and things like that, and you're like, or what are you grateful for? Oh, I'm grateful for my family. Oh, I'm grateful, but you may not mean it to the degree that as you grow and expand and really start to think legacy, me plus three, not just me and my kid, not just me right now, not me this year.
Right.
What does that look like for the long term if I hurt myself? And so I'm still digging deeper on what legacy means and continuing down that. But it made my board. And actually, like when you say it, it's on my desk where I see it and it has it. I drew it out. All my kids are artists, and I highly encourage that behavior. And so it was a whole bunch of pins and some poster boards, and everybody wrote that out, and legacy and what that means. And so, I'm making decisions now that I didn't. I'm in sales, right? And even I've been in sales my entire life, and I didn't realize it. And I love Grant Cardone's book, right? Sell or Be Sold. I do believe that is something, because whether you're a salesman or not, you are a salesman.
Absolutely.
You better sharpen that skill set because you are selling. And in that book, he's like, you're selling your spouse on, giving you the love and attention that you want. You're selling the
first date.
You're selling, you're selling
prom date. I mean, that's you're selling. Yep.
Yeah, and so with that came also these, because I'm good with people, right? And that's a skill set that I fine tuned. And I am able to create money, right? And opportunities from the relationships that I meet. it was always just like, oh, money came in. Oh, I can always make more. I can always make more. Right. And so it was like, oh, we do have, and we can kind of do whatever we have, not really thinking of legacy. And so
Sure.
the more that legacy and what it is that I want to leave, the life that I want to provide to my kids, whether I find myself in a relationship, I hope someday I do. I feel like I am called to that someday, but that isn't what it's been,
Sure.
or my priority here in the past going on 4 years. But what I'm providing to my kids and legacy, and as far as what I'm modeling to them,
Yeah.
they saw mom change. I
100%.
changed significantly, and in that to me was the foundation of that legacy and what that looks like and how I show up, and now I'm getting to see, right, what that means, like even as my daughter who's 18 years old, and conversations we're having, and some of the things that she's saying, and in my heart in my mind, initially my redirect is like, you see,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
of course we don't say see, and I
Sure.
told you.
Right.
So then it's like, oh, I'm watching her shed some of what I was leaving behind initially in the life of chaos and everything that I once lived with my children, to this figuring out and transforming into something more
Sure.
intentional. And I'm watching that. I'm watching those old programmings kind of dissipate in her, and as she evolves
Yeah.
and transforms, and even the trickle effect that it has on my other kids. So
I've got an 18-year-old daughter, and it's hard for even me to have a conversation with her without getting choked up, because before I realized what legacy meant, I had the "you see, I told you so" mindset.
and who likes that?
Nobody.
Nobody.
So now, like, it's ironic because 2 nights ago, my mom was at our house, and Leslie had got sick for a while. My mom came in and helped us out, just kind of clean, organize, and I'm like, I kind of like this, Mom. You want to work for me? So she's cleaning up a mouse. I get home, and there's paperwork on the foot of my bed, and I'm going somewhere with this legacy conversation. So the first, it was the eulogy that I wrote. I lost my great grandfather in 2020, and most people like don't have a relationship with their great grandparents. My great grandfather was my mentor, my role model. He was the first person that exemplified a legacy. So when the family said, "Who's writing the eulogy?" I was there, both hands up. I got this, because I'm going to say things about him that I don't think people really realized. And in the Bible, King David talks about, to Solomon, he says, I can't tell you what scripture it is offhand, but he says, show yourself a man. What he meant by that was show yourself to be a man. What the Bible says about being a man, what God says about being a man. And so that's where I was going with this, is showing yourself a woman. That's something that is unheard of in terms of the superlatives that describe legacy. So when I wrote that, I picked up the eulogy, I started reading it, and I'm reading what I wrote, and I wrote this prior to giving my life to Christ. And I realized that the seeds were there. My mindset was there. It was drowned by a worldview and a victim mentality. And I had a leadership mindset. I felt like I had the leadership mindset of a small kid. I just had to make my own way, and I was always in a fight, and I was grinding. Which now I'm like, I ain't interested in that.
Flow.
Right?
Attraction.
Sure.
Yes.
So when I think legacy, and I think of show yourself a man, um, my daughter has gotten so many traits about from simply being in my draft, that good and bad, that I didn't realize that I was modeling
Yeah.
who she would ultimately one day become. I have 11-year-old now. I see the things in my daughter, and I have two other stepchildren who are older as well, but I see the things that the before Christ Travis modeling planted into them.
Yeah.
And I don't want that I don't want those things to transcribe my youngest son's mindset. So my mind is show yourself a man. I fail every day, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I look back at that eulogy, and I realize that that man lived a 98-year legacy. And what do I want people to say about me when someone writes my eulogy?
I think about that too. I think
That
about
to
that all
me
the
is
time.
legacy, is what do people think when you're not around to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And when they're talking to other
Within.
people and describing impact is one of my personal core values. But that to me was what I wanted to ask you is, as a mom of daughters, um, as a mom of an 18-year-old daughter, she's watched you live through adversity and failing forward.
Yeah.
And it's more about what you do than what you say. And what does that mean in public to you as showing yourself as a woman? And I think the word woman, I can change the dynamic of the word woman in the tonality in which I say it. When I just say, men say, oh, damn woman.
Mm-hmm.
But what about showing yourself as a woman? What does that mean to you?
So vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's something that I did my unhealed self, right? And I don't ever think that we're like fully healed. Oh no, not at all.
It's a process. Yeah.
It's a lifelong process. But the raw and unhealed version of me had embodied so much masculine, right? And I had to lead, and this is the way, and this is and this demanding and everything else. And so legacy to me now means the embracing the vulnerability and the softer side of me. And I've gotten very vulnerable with my children to admit my faults, right? And to admit and look, we have very real conversations. And I'm not a super traditional person or mom. And so, it was always, even with my daughter's friends and stuff like that, when they came over, it was like, hey, if you don't want real conversations happening with your kids, don't let them come to my house. Because if something is happening in the world around us, like I'm having conversations. Yeah. And from early on, right? I mean, I can remember some of the conversations. She's like, scooching down in her chair and like trying to cover her ears.
Too much, mom. Too much, mom.
Like, stop. And I'm like, oh no, what do you know about this? And even with my boys, right? Whenever we're walking out into out of a grocery store, out of a store, and it's late at night, and they're like being boys and wanting to fight with one another and argue and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey guys, you know what? A woman with 2 kids looks like a great target. How about we be aware of what it is that we're doing while we're walking to the car? Y'all can pick this up and resume this once we get in the car and the doors are locked. But right now, how about we just have awareness about what's around us? And so really that vulnerability and embracing the soft side of me. And I think that's been the biggest even challenge for me, right? Because I'm a single mom. So to embrace that vulnerability, yet still be the leader of my children and in my business and, in their lives and of my household, yet still embrace that vulnerability. That is what I truly think, because also it gives them the space to know that it's okay to fail forward. Whereas whenever I was just all the masculine and the demanding and the everything needs to be perfect and go this way and that way. And not to say that that's what masculine was, that's what my masculine was.
I get
right.
It.
And so with that, I was making it impossible to have space to fail and it be okay. Now, oftentimes, in fact, just this week on an email, it was a collaboration and it was something in business and on a committee that I'm serving on. And they were like, my apologies for what this looks like as I'm learning something new. And I was like, no apologies needed. Like I highly encourage, and we have space to make some mistakes as we're growing and expanding, because if we don't, then that's where the trouble comes in. So that legacy, I mean, it's been vulnerable and having very real conversations with my kids along the way. I don't always know what the answer is. However, I want you to feel safe because I feel safe in knowing that I'm going to figure it out. I know the resources. I have the resources within myself to know where to go, who to ask to get us whatever it is that we need and where we're going.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love your approach. I think looking at it from the perspective of showing yourself as a woman in this economic climate, in the craziness going on in the world, it's not heard of. I think most women get put in a box, and men are supposed to just be providers and protectors, and women are supposed to be nurturers and caregivers. And I don't necessarily believe in all of that in regards to how you face adversity. And I think so. I want to commend you, obviously, on the way you showed up as a woman on the heels of failing forward, on the heels of facing adversity. Now I want to get into all the good stuff. I want to talk a little business with you. So you're in real estate. You have a brokerage.
I did have a brokerage at one
Okay.
point in time. I have an associate broker's license. However, I have that license underneath a brokerage, and
So,
it's a cloud-based brokerage. So
sure.
technology is always something that I lean into, and that is definitely a technology, like a forward thinking type
Absolutely.
of
Yep.
brokerage style.
So we're shooting this podcast in Houma, Louisiana. You were born and raised here in
Born
this
and raised,
area,
yes.
and this is where you built your business and raised your kids.
Yes.
Okay, so as a realtor, the next topic I wrote was building an ecosystem.
Mhm.
Building an ecosystem where your traits in business can thrive. We talked about relationship capital, but when Kelli gets out on a Monday morning in January, August, whenever, and says, today, here are the things, because as a realtor, you don't have like you don't have to go to the office and log in and start doing correct. So building an ecosystem is probably a big part of your daily life. What does that look like for you? How have you built success through relationships, the tactical way of my 17-year-old daughter, Sloan, which you know, sent me a text about 3 days ago. Leslie and I had a conversation with her, and I won't say it, but she mentioned that she wanted to. She's a junior now. When she was a sophomore, she said, "This is what I want to do as a career."
Mhm.
And there was the word in the blank, and I saw Leslie like the smoke coming from her ears, like that's not what I want my daughter to do. And so at that time, I said, "Calm down, just pray about it,
Mhm.
support her, don't minimalize it, and watch what God's going to do with this thing."
Mhm.
So 2 or 3 days ago, she sends me a text, middle of the school day. Sorry, principal.
It's the world we live in
Sends me
now.
a text and says, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to be in real estate. Can you help me get started? I said, oh, absolutely. I
Oh,
can
we're
help
going to
because
lunch.
I got people in my ecosystem that's going to help you get started.
Yeah.
And so I was going to tap into you on that for sure. But what does that mean? Like knowing that there's a 17-year-old girl out there that says somebody, I can't be, I'll let you know, I'll give you credit if you inspired her. But I don't know that. I don't know where the inspiration came from.
You could be selling sunset.
What are you? Yeah, maybe,
You know?
which is really cool. But
I haven't watched it. I just heard about it.
well, and you know what?
You quit. I watched real estate before I got into real estate.
Really?
Yeah. Once I started doing real estate, I
Yeah,
had no desire to watch any real estate. So
sure.
while I may have heard of Property Brothers or Selling
Right.
Sunset or whatever, I don't watch
Sure.
real estate shows because HGTV or anything.
It's a little
like that.
dramatic. Yeah.
I gave
This
it
is my
up
whole
over
life.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about 17-year-old girl, 18-year-old girl, I don't know, maybe single mom that says, I want to be a 1099. I want to raise my kids. I want to have a legacy mindset with my kids. I'm not relationship predominantly focused right now. How do I get out and go build an ecosystem that will lend itself to being a successful realtor?
So, I mean, one set of advice that I have for anybody is getting around someone who is doing it at a high level and figuring out what it is that you can do to help them to be in their world, to be able to just take those notes, right? I mean,
Sure.
that's the short curve, the shortcut to anything. You asked, how to build that ecosystem. I do have a calendar, and when I first got in the business, I didn't know, and I had these terrible sayings that were, in my mind and that I was carrying forward whenever I was, not being authentic to myself. So
Sure.
like one that comes to mind is fake it till you make it.
Yep.
I hate that. I hate that saying. Fake it
Yeah.
till you make it. No,
Right.
no, absolutely not. And I'll never forget like just how embarrassed I was and when that saying no longer served me. And it was when I was sitting across from a business owner and he was well established in the community. His family had owned a lot of real estate and I was there, and he knew my dad well because my dad had bought, suits for him for a really long time. And I had this fake Michael Kors watch with that little jelly band and that diamond, around. And I got it from the jewelry show, one of those,
Sure.
shows. And he's like, nice watch. And I was like, oh, thank you. Fake
Yeah.
it till you make it.
Right.
And I had said that to that man. And like, this is a well established, I
Sure.
guarantee you the watch that he was wearing was not fake.
Was not
and,
fake, yeah.
and when I said that, all of a sudden I was just like, what in the heck am I saying? And you know, and I dropped that right then and there, right?
Sure.
And so that was early on in my career. I was 25 when I got started in this business. I hadn't bought anything yet. Um, Anybody who's wanting to get into this kind of work, I highly encourage, especially young women, to sharpen up their skill cells, the skill,
Soft skills. Yeah.
sales skill set.
Sure.
Yes, because it will serve you so well. And then there's no income limit, right? It's so easy for people to get trapped into that, you know, comfortable with, I make X, Y, and Z, and I can count on that, you know, each week and whatever. Now, does it take a bit of an iron stomach and
Yeah.
some grit to go out there and make it happen, because that's what you're doing. You're making it happen. And
Sure.
you better have that skill set to be able to do that, and that hunger. However, for me, that has served me so well and even positioned me to be able to support myself as a single mom with 3 kids. And my kids have a pretty decent lifestyle,
Sure.
regardless if they want to pretend like they don't have
Right.
the latest and
Could have it
greatest.
worse.
Correct. And so, you know, with that, it's the mentorship, right? Because in the training that I had early on, you don't know what you don't know, right? And while I did get into this business with sales, so one, my dad was a salesman. I didn't know what I wanted to get into in life, but I wanted to be in business. I went to school for business. I didn't even finish my degree. I got out and got my real estate license. They flipped houses whenever I was younger, and so that kind of sparked. You know, I remember blowing popcorn ceilings when that was in,
Yeah.
and staining cabinets and pulling out carpets, and so
That's
remodeling some houses. And then early on, like I worked in the service industry. I tended bar. I was a shot girl. I sold portrait packages, Olin Mills, summer
Yep.
job.
Yep.
And so sales was just something that I had always gotten into. And I think that sales is such a great career because of, and you know, and I guess I'm getting a little off topic
No,
here
you're
in
good.
some of this, but you know,
You're steering me in the right direction. So,
okay, showing them right on time.
That's right.
But it helps serve, right? And I guess that's why I can approach anybody and I'm looking them straight in the eye and I'm giving them a firm handshake. My dad did teach me a handshake early on. He also taught me how to tie a tie and to put air in my tire and change the oil. So for any dads out there, teach your daughters those things. Like still to this day at funerals, I cannot tell you how many men's ties. Like they stand up and I am tying men's ties. Give me your tie. Okay, I got one. Here you go. And they'll even, you know, when I see them later, they're like, this is Ty from the last time you saw it. Okay.
No, that's cool. Look, I want to say, if you didn't catch the tactical in there, here's what Nick, who's behind the camera right now, who's helped me train a lot of salespeople. And one of the biggest issues we have is our sales training process has really condensed. And so what you said was develop some sales skills. Now I think they call it soft skills or anything like that. When we brought in sales reps to sell home generators or electricians or electrical service or business to business service, most people get caught up in what they don't know. I feel like personally, I can go sell anything.
Me too.
Because I'm selling me. And so when I say you show yourself a woman, show yourself up as a woman, that's what you're selling. Like you sell real estate. You don't build the houses. You didn't drive the last nail. You didn't do the painting. So you're selling yourself. And so people would contact you. It's crazy in the real estate world because they might hire a realtor and don't even know what house they want to buy yet. So they bought you right out of the gate. And maybe that doesn't turn into the payday. And that's where I think young people need to kind of steer their focus is learn to sell yourself, but also realize that the gratification doesn't always come with the immediate payday resulting in the first handshake.
It's not. It's going to be what you sow over time.
That's right.
And so the handshake is really important, right?
Yep, planted a seed.
Yeah. And even to the point of what the guest, you know, at the dinner party said was like, wow, you know, the impression. And
instrumental.
That is the one thing that has been constant, right? I don't have to say a word. However, when I walk into a room, my presence is felt.
Absolutely.
And it's not I'm not saying that in an egotistical way whatsoever. It's the way that I carry myself with confidence. It is that I am looking everyone in the eye. I am, you know, I will go up and shake a hand and I'm going to shake. I give it a damn good handshake.
Absolutely.
You know, thanks, Dad. And so with those things. And I am going to ask questions about you and what it is that you do. And it is heart to heart, right? And
Absolutely.
I believe that that's what sales is. It's not the slimy and I'm going to sell you on something
Yep.
that you don't need. It is. So anyone who comes to me, I'm asking questions. They may
Yep.
come to me and like, okay, I want, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in this area. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you going to use those spaces?
Yeah.
Right?
Tell me
Tell me
about your
more
life.
about,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Is that close proximity to where you work? Is that
Sure.
important? Is it the school district that's really important to you?
Right.
How do you want to use the backyard space? And, do you need to have access for
Sure.
boats or recreational vehicles or what that looks like? And then the timeline. And so asking and finding out more about the people is what helps. So interestingly enough, I have an agent referred a client to me, and we started talking, and she wanted to help her, or she was assisting in helping her son, 2 sons actually, purchase their first properties. And this is her doing this where it would have originally been her husband handling those things, but he passed on. And so now she's responsible for it.
Hmm.
And the son that I had the pleasure of helping and still through is autistic, but high level autistic, like several degrees.
Super smart. Yeah.
Several degrees, right? And I'm like, I don't even have 1 degree. I have the degree in life and hard knocks. And so buying the first house, and as we were talking through all that, right, she came and she's like, this is what we're looking for, da 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 da.
Sure.
Great. However, I also understood that first time home buyer and that he'll probably be in the house for a period of time. He shared with me location of where it is that he wanted to be and why he wanted to be in those areas. We came upon one property and ended up in a multiple offer situation. The property was only on the market for a day. And in this climate right now, today, as we're shooting this, it's not necessarily a seller's market. It's more
Right.
so a buyer's market, longer days on market and all those things. We were in multiple offers and granted, I just met them. Right.
Mhm.
And so you can only you can only gain so much rapport
Short-
with someone
short period of
initially.
time, yeah.
Yeah. And I told her, hey, look, we formed up our offer and we weren't coming in at what they were asking for, and multiple offers coming in and just dynamics. I know people and of the information that I have, yes, there's going to be some variables, but this is how I see, and my suggestion is that if you guys want this, that we're going to need to go in here. Well, they decided not to. And I said, okay. And I said, before I submit this, I just want to let you know for what it is that you've told me that what you're looking for, right? Your husband's usually the one who would do these things and make these kind of decisions. You're looking for something that's going to give you an ROI later on in life because he's going to sell this at some point and
Sure.
go into something else. And so for all these factors, the top school that everyone wants to be at is right here. All of what's being built out right here, all of who owns this and what's going to be happening there. I see this as being something that is going to increase in value. Will I say that to every buyer? Nope. I will
Right.
not. There are
Right.
times that I'm talking people out of buying
Of course.
and they're like, are you even in
A
sales?
realtor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like, are you trying to sell me something or are you trying not to sell me something?
Right.
And I told her, and I said, this is not the conversation I'm having with you. You don't have any other experience with me, but I'm saying this. They did not decide to go that route. Okay, great. We lost out on that one. We ended up increasing the price point for what it is. And when we went back and looked, because I gave them a variety of houses in various price points to go and look at, and they circled back and they ended up getting something higher price point in that same area. And it's because she looked at me and she said, I see what you were trying to tell me now. And now,
Mhm.
granted, she went go and talked to some of her people and confidants and
Sure.
looked at everything a little bit more.
Had to vet you. Yeah.
Well, she did, right? Because
Yeah.
again, you can only gain so much rapport. And while she had
Sure.
a level of trust in me, they inched up the offer a little bit, but at the same token, it wasn't quite there. And then it was so much there that she's like, okay, now
Yeah.
I see you've got us and like you know what you're talking about. And so yes, take this and leave this.
Look, I'm gonna say where we started on this was we got so much I want to talk about, and that was a clinic on how to get started in sales and in realty. I'll say a few things. I've said it time and time again on this podcast. I have like 3 or 4 rules that I think every person that's going to wants to be successful in sales or in leadership is, and Kelly embodies all of these, is first and foremost, you have to have a deep sense of self-awareness. You have to know who you are and who you aren't.
Yeah.
That's how you develop a good handshake, and that's how you develop eye contact and confidence. The next thing is, you have to be able to process information at a rapid rate of speed.
Mhm.
You're building rapport with a client. You are looking, listening, and feeling. It's like a fire. I think they used to tell us that in grade school. Look, listen, and feel. When you think about whether it's a fire or something going on, look, listen, and feel with that client. Make sure you ask the right questions. Process as much information as you can. Three, I think you have to have a maniacal sense of urgency. You don't have to do things fast. That doesn't but value someone's relationship, their time, their money, their energy, their effort. Show a sense of urgency. And lastly, it's have the ability to learn the art of processing and having crucial conversations. Be okay with having a tough conversation with someone saying, look, I know this is your budget. I know you like this house, but we've visited 4 times. Here's the thing I know about you. A, B, C, and D. I think you should maybe look here, and I think we should change the price point because I've been paying attention. You're going to blow your client away because most people don't listen to people.
It's those tough conversations, right?
Sure.
And I love that you added that one in there. And I think that that's why the clientele that I have are a lot of business
Sure.
owners, because don't give me the fluff. Tell me what it is that I need to know. Like,
Right.
and with that, I've had very tough conversations, and I'm willing to have the uncomfortable conversations.
Right.
Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know what? The house smells like animals.
Right.
And while I have a dog and I love dogs, the reality is that it's going to turn off some buyers.
Sure.
Do you know how little people want to have that conversation?
Right.
Do you know how little, even, I mean, whenever also recently, I had a conversation with a seller, and it was, as we're working net sheets and what the numbers look like for where the market's at and what that looks like. And then it's, hey, do you realize that you're going to have to come to the closing with money?
Yeah.
Are you prepared for that?
Sure.
And it's having
Absolutely.
the conversation. And then also knowing, like staying in your lane. And I forget how you worded it, but that's what knowing what it is that you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had a conversation.
Knowing your strengths and weaknesses, self-awareness, like what I'm not good at, I'm going to hire for, or I'm going to train for,
Right.
but I at least know about it.
Yeah.
Like,
or I'm not even going to go that direction.
Correct.
Right. So like I had somebody who called me, and they're an investor, and they have some land, and they wanted, a top producing agent in the area to work with. And so I had the conversation, but it was just a short conversation because I said, this isn't what I'm looking,
Sure.
to take on our market. And so knowing what it is, right? And sometimes that's commercial, where I have somebody that wants me to lease a commercial space. Well, leasing commercial space isn't necessarily, what it is I'm going to do.
Sure.
I've helped people buy commercial and sell commercial, but not necessarily in that lease space. So I love how you condensed that.
Right.
And stated it so
I think,
clearly.
I mean, I keep them as a note in my phone. I think if anybody asks me for advice, which I get asked a lot, like how do I get started? Or there's so many intrinsic things you have to focus on before you worry about what you're going to do and what arena you're going to perform in.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
We're talking about real estate. We didn't really talk much about real estate. I mean, I guess, of course, we did. It was client relations.
Yeah.
But again, whether you sell in an Acadian style house or a barn dominium or a mansion, that's irrelevant. It's knowing the buyer and seller, being a great liaison between the two, and being a pro. Like, you got to put in work to be a pro. So young men or women, I hope my daughter is going to watch this. She's going to watch this. But think about what I just said. You got to know who you are and who you aren't. You got to be able to process information at a rapid rate of speed. You can't fart around.
Mhm.
That means you got to study. That means you got to be a pro. You got to put in the work. A maniacal sense of urgency. Elon talks about it in his book. Is the reason why he was so successful is not because he's the most brilliant person in the world. I disagree. However, but he operates like his pants are on fire.
Yeah.
And some people think that's a negative thing. Depending on what arena you are, I would fight you all day on that.
I embody that, and
Yeah.
I didn't even realize, and I did not know what maniacal meant. So
Yeah, like a maniac.
Using words like way above my level, but absolutely, and I embody that as well.
Sure.
Yeah. I think people get into, and especially in my line of work, and they get into this, and they're like, "Let me figure out my branding." Branding needs to be the last thing on your mind.
Sure.
How you're going to talk to, engage, and even find the people to do business with needs to be top of mind for you.
Personal branding, if you can't talk to people, the odds of you having success in the real estate industry is probably going to be hard. If you can't listen, and feel your way around a conversation as a client, probably not going to have much success. And if you move slow and you're the last person to answer the lead, and you don't return phone calls, and you don't return text messages, or you don't know the latest and greatest ways to communicate with people, you're probably not working on your craft. That probably transcends every industry. With as much as I thought we were going to delve into these crazy real estate industry, we've been hacking it up for about an hour. So I'm going to give you like some rapid fire on the way we kind of close our show
Okay.
as prime movers. Is first I'm going to ask you for some book recommendations.
Yeah.
Give me 3 to 5 books that you think someone. I'm picturing so many amazing opportunities to inspire here. I'm picturing a single mom. I'm picturing the young 17, 18-year-old girl. I'm picturing the guy who is sitting there thinking that I feel really small, that she could be that successful, and I have all the male advantage or of being in these industries that I can go do it. I'm thinking of so many ways to inspire off of this. What can they, readers are leaders, that's my opinion. What book can they crack that changed the game for you?
So yeah, a few of them. Gary Zukov, Heart of the Soul,
Okay.
is a book that I read and reread, and at
Oh,
times and when I say read and reread, it's Audible for me. And sometimes the book's so good, and this one I do have, the hard
both
copy as
copies.
well. Yeah. But this is one that when something is happening inside of life, like I'm prompted to open it and just start reading it. So at any given time, I'm somewheres in the book, right? Like right now, if I opened up my Audible, it might be at, 4 hours and whatever. It's not finished
Sure.
because it's one that I just constantly
Yep,
go back
same.
to, and it's always right on time.
That's right.
And it talks about emotional awareness, and that self-awareness is something that it started that foundation for me, right?
Sure.
And that emotional awareness and how to use that in everyday situations was huge. The first time I read the book, it was a lot. It was
heavy.
like, it was heavy. It was like a fire hose turned on me, and it was,
Yep.
I couldn't capture all the things, and that's okay. Like, to anyone who decides to take me up on that book recommendation, go through it and go through it again, because you're going to pick up different things, and life situations will happen, and you'll recall, and it just really is good.
Number 2.
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And that has taught me to, the Four Agreements: be impeccable with your word. What you say matters. And that goes along with one of my core values is just, showing up.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to show up in the places and spaces that we impact, right?
Sure.
And how we think, how we speak, and what we hold in our hearts and physically walk into. And so that really helped. And then also, like, not taking things personally is another one. And I mean, even for sales, for life in general, how many times I am a very direct person, and it's who I am at my nature. And I'm a bit of a rebel, and I love and embrace that part of me. I used to try and suppress it. Now it's part of me. To anyone who takes things personally all the time, I am harsh, and I am, too much, and that's okay.
Yep.
I'm not for them, and that's okay. But for us not to take anything personal, and even realize that even if somebody shows up and they're just really crappy in their attitude, their victim mindset, whatever, it has nothing to do with us.
That's right.
It has to do with the battles that they're dealing with within themselves.
They have a cross to bear. That's right.
Yeah, and that's all on them. 3 to 5. And when you said
Number
that,
3 is good.
yeah, there was something else that had came to mind immediately, and it was more business minded, and it escaped me. I mean, I did say Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone, which really, Grant Cardone has a lot of great ones that I love. Entrepreneurship by Dave Ramsey. And although Dave Ramsey is not my favorite,
EntreLeadership, that's a great book.
EntreLeadership is a great book for anybody who's like leading and things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Look, I'm not going to press you. You could come back to me.
Those first two.
Because the first one that you said, Heart of the Soul, how it's kind of congruent in your Audible library, is inspired the next question. Because for me, that book is Patrick Bet-David's Your Next 5 Moves. That stays open in my Audible library all of the time. So that's how I got this question, because it's part of the book, is part of my life. And you talked about Audible. Is I have hardcover books that I've never even cracked because I love the book so much from the digital sense. I wanted to support the author.
Yeah.
And so I just bought the hardcover book and stuck it on my bookcase because I thought it was worth, I got $600,000 of value out of a $30 book. The least I could do is spend $60 and buy 2 copies. And I've gifted a lot of them.
Yeah.
So I love that concept. Your next 5 moves. Right now, here's the tactical side. If you've been listening to the whole podcast, here's where you're going to get the meat and potatoes. Give somebody, the up and coming Kelli Guidry, their next 5 moves. Literally the first 5 things that they should do to get the ball rolling in their entrepreneurial life, in their leadership life, whatever it is. Give me 5 moves to get the ball rolling.
How to Win and Influence Friends too was the
Okay.
one that I was
How to
thinking
Win
about.
Friends.
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
That's one that I reread a lot of times. Next 5 moves, up and coming. 1, get clear on what it is, like who you are and what it is that you want out of life.
Yep.
And know that like that may change from year to year and whatever, but you have to get clear.
Okay.
You cannot get to where you're going with fuzziness, right?
Sure. Get some clarity. Yep.
Clarity, yeah, is the first and foremost. The next, sharpen the skill sets. What skill sets is it that you need? And for anything that you lack, the who is going to matter. So who is it that you need to align yourself with, surround yourself with, clarity,
Yep.
the skill sets, the who.
So she said, get clear on your goals, skill set, get the right people in your life. Yeah. And 4, she said, get to work.
Yeah.
Like start doing. Absolutely.
Hands on fire. With that real big word that he used earlier.
Maniacal.
I'm gonna write it down and I'm gonna learn that word so I can say it eloquently next time. And then reassess.
Yep. Evaluate. Study yourself. Yep.
Yeah. And that's just, the power in the pause, making sure that, okay, now you went.
Yeah.
Don't just keep going with the pants on fire, like trying to blaze that trail. You will blaze the trail as long as you execute on all of those things and take that time for that power in the pause and evaluate what's serving you and what's not serving you. And that loops back to what we were talking about in the beginning of looking at the calendar and what is it, that I had in my calendar last year? Did it move the needle forward to the life that I am choosing to create by design, to leave that legacy, to impact the spaces and places in which I show up in?
Amen. All right. So one thing I was going to bring out is you recently tagged me on social media and it forced me to do it. Was you have a word of the year?
Yes.
Tell me what that is and what it means to you.
Oh, mine is alignment. So, we talked about that inner thing as entrepreneurs, that can be like, I need to do more and more and more. And I certainly was feeling a lot of that at the end of last year and that last quarter. And that's what allowed me to stop and reevaluate. And so that word of the year, and sometimes it's a phrase like right on time, but that alignment was that there's nothing more that I need to go and do and be and have. I'm solid in the space that I'm in. And I am so hippy dippy. So I'm going to do all the movements, but like everything is aligning to me.
Sure.
And just how I need and whatever it is that I need, it's going to present itself to me. And I'm going to be eyes wide open.
So you said, you talked about number 3 in the next 5 move was getting the right people in your life. So when she tagged me in that, I'll give credit where credit is due. A mentor of mine from the past is Pastor Keith Craft. He coined the phrase, your alignments determine your assignments.
Yes.
And what he meant by that is the people you do life with will ultimately determine what you do in life. You are not going to play in the NFL with middle school surroundings. You are not going to make it to high level if the people in your life are not trying to get to where you are. So you talked about in the beginning of protecting your yes. The things you say yes to have to matter. You have to gain ground. It has to give you some form of moving the needle. Doesn't mean in your business life. It can mean in your spiritual life. It can emotional health. So all of it. Absolutely. But most importantly, when you level up your circle, I'll give you an example. My VA and I have been working on this. I said, I want to be more intentional. Her name's Pal. I said, Pal, I want to be more intentional about the people that I have thousands of friends on social media. And if I can't interact and engage with them, I need to make way for people that I can interact and engage with. So we developed a DM chain and she's been helping me DM like 100 people a day, just saying, hey, thank you for being my friend on social media. this is why I moved to my business to Homa. This is what I got going on in my personal life. This is my family. Here's our goals. My wife and I want to level up our circle. Thanks for being a part of that. Oh, by the way, here's what I do in my business. If I can ever help you, drop me a DM. The level of response I'm getting,
That
it's
right
crazy.
there is so tactical. I'm like, oh, thank you. That's going in my toolbox.
Right.
That is the next thing that
And
we're going to be working
the
on.
people that read them and don't respond, then I'm going to rank that person's value in my digital audience and my sphere of influence. And the amount of people that I've gotten that read the whole thing and responded with value, they might not have done 1 ounce of business with me,
Yeah.
but I'm better because of it, because I was intentional about leveling up my circle.
And you were genuine and authentic in
Right.
what it is that you did, and that's huge in
Sure.
itself. And look, that digital clean out, so
Mhm.
like, especially right, and on some social medias, Facebook for one of them, like you reach a capacity, and
Yep.
and I've reached mine. And so
Same.
if we were friends before and we're not anymore, well, it's because
Right.
I
Huh.
had to figure out and
Right.
make room,
I'm
right?
going
Because look,
somewhere, and
yeah,
I
and sometimes there's
can't
people
take
looking
everybody
on and
with you.
like they're looking on and they're not cheering you on and wanting you to win. And me, genuinely, it doesn't matter who you are. Like I am in your corner and I am cheering you on.
Sure.
And I am like my people, I'm their biggest cheerleaders and continue to be. But I do know that there's others, right, that maybe we have in our lives, and whether it's family, friends, strangers, whatever, that when we're doing good, they don't feel so good about that. And
Yeah.
those ill wills and whatever, meaningful or not meaning to, right?
Yep.
And so clearing out that kind of stuff, and the who you surround
Yep.
yourself matters. And one thing that I didn't mention, but I have done along the way, and well, I did mention about getting into the spaces, right, of
Sure.
people who are doing it at a high level. I put myself in some rooms that, let me tell you, little Kelli Guidry from
Yep.
Houma, Louisiana, down the bayou,
Right.
had no business, right, to most people's standards of even being into those rooms. And these were people that were like doing big things in these big cities. And man, they were just incredible. And I would go sit in there and talk about maybe nervous.
Same.
If you have not made yourself uncomfortable, that butterflies feeling in the belly, because quite frankly, fear and excitement,
Yep.
it's the same feeling
No
that
doubt.
we have on the inside. And so if you haven't had that feeling, if you can't say, yep, last time I felt that was this time, then you're just complacent and
Sure.
living too comfortably. And so it is time to step outside of the comfort zone, put yourself in a situation, do something you've never done before. I mean, of course, be safe about it. I'm not telling you to go,
Right.
free diving, jumping off of a plane, I mean,
Sure.
off of a cliff or a bridge or anything like that. However, putting myself in some of these rooms, I felt like, who am I to go and do that? And you know what? There were probably people, but I did those things, those uncomfortable things, until I was like, this is who I am. I do belong in these rooms and around these people and having these conversations.
We could shoot a whole nother podcast on what you just said, because Nick's been in those rooms with me. He's been behind the camera. He's helped me prepare some pretty powerful presentations that I didn't even look at till 2 minutes before I walked in the room. And so I've been in those, and I believe that us as people, as leaders, as thought leaders, as motivational speakers or entrepreneurs or whatever title you want to put on it, we are like a bow and arrow. The heart, as far as we're going to get stretched back, is going to be as far as the arrow is going to fly. And if you're not willing to stretch yourself, you don't know what a stretch goal is. Tune into the next Prime Mover podcast, and we'll talk about that. But no, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's where the growth happens. I can name 50 different analogies. There's no growth in the comfort zone. There's no company on the extra mile. But at the end of the day, is stretch yourself. You learn so much about what you're made of and who you're made of. And my next question, she already answered, didn't even realize my closing question was going to be, what does being a prime mover mean to you? She just answered it. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, show up, have an operating system. I used this before, become a POS. And that means the world says that's a bad thing. What I think is adapt a personal operating system. What is your personal operating system? Some people call it core values. Some people call it a creed, a code. My personal operating system, I recited them to you. Kelli's next 5 moves is her POS, her personal operating system. You develop those things, whether it's realty, whether it's generators, whether it's podcasting, whether it's being a YouTuber or a drop shipper, you will find success when you are the first person to show up. You develop a maniacal sense of urgency. So at Prime Mover Podcast, We are all maniacal about being maniacs. So thank you. This was awesome. I think we're going to have to do a segment 2. And I haven't said that. I've said that to about 50% of our guests, that I have to do a segment 2, because you moved me. And I got to be honest, I haven't done a podcast in quite a while. And so when I started, I told Nick before we got on camera, I was really upset that we hadn't shot one in a while, but the business had steered us in the wrong direction. But I have something on my screen here that I circled about 50 times that she said that was for me. That was my payment for today's podcast. As you said, the power of a pause. I've coached that in little league sports. When you get panicked and when things are going your way, just pause for a second. Some people look at it in a derogatory light. I look at it as you are preparing to be profound if you just pause for a second. Whether that's in your life, in a speech, you're giving a speech, just pause for a second.
Yeah.
Watch what's going to happen to the room. When you don't know where life's taking you, when you don't know where your job's taking you, where your business is taking you, pause for a second, process some information, and I promise you that's going to lend itself to becoming a prime mover. So thank you so much. I enjoyed this.
Thank
This was
you
amazing.
so much. I'm going back and watch this. All those jewels that just got dropped. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us on Prime Mover Podcast, where we ignite the engine of your success through faith, family, finance, and fitness. Join us again.